Bye. Hare Krishna. I want to thank all of you for coming, each and every one of you, to hear some nice katha about Srila Prabhupada. So I wanted to start out by
tell your name.
saying my name is Sandamini, dasi, and I took initiation in 1975 from Srila Prabhupada. Did I say San Diego? Okay, in San Diego. Shruti Kirti was talking yesterday, and he was calling himself a second string devotee because he got initiated in 71. He wasn't with the early group in 67, so if he's second string, I'm definitely third string. Getting initiated that late, but still, I'm here by the grace of the Lord and Srila Prabhupada. When many devotees have amazing stories how they became devotees. There was one lady in San Diego who went to the university library every day because she knew that one of the books was going to help her become enlightened. She knew one of these books was going to tell her who God was. So she'd go every day and wander the aisles. Nothing would happen, nothing would happen. Then one day she walked by Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam and she said it was shining, it was radiating. So she went over and picked it up, read it, and came and joined the temple. So unlike her, that's not how I came. There's so many nice stories of devotees. Raghunath Swami became practically at 5 years old. He was interested in spiritual life. And so I had a different experience. I met the devotees when I was hitchhiking. And I met a flute devotee. So the reason I'm telling you this story is because there's hope for everyone. When I first met Srila Prabhupada, one Vyas Puja I wrote, and one of the lines was, when I first saw you, I slept through your class. At Golden Gate Park, I laid on the grass. So this is was my introduction to Krishna consciousness. And but by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, I was able to somehow crawl out of my hole and be able to offer a little bit of service. So that experience in Golden Gate Park was very interesting because I was just coming to Krishna consciousness, and it was the first time I was going to be able to see Srila Prabhupada up close. And the only thing I could compare it to with my very meager spirituality was meeting a rock star. So that's what I was kind of thinking in my mind. I was going to meet someone from the Rolling Stones or something. I had such a mundane conception. So in the old San Francisco temple, there was a stairway, so all the ladies were up on the stairway, and Prabhupada was going to be walking in the front door that was entering into the temple room, which incidentally the temple was a morgue at the time. Not at the time, before. And we transformed it into a beautiful temple. So when Prabhupada walked in, of course I think everyone has this experience because you hear Prabhupada, you see pictures and you imagine he's about 10 feet tall. But actually he's very short. He was only about 5'2" or something. He was very small. And all the sannyasis were very tall, so when Prabhupada came in, you couldn't even see him because the sannyasis were all walking around him. But at one point, the sannyasis parted, and I could see Prabhupada's beautiful, radiant face, held very aristocratically. And the girls were throwing flower petals, because of course we read about Dwarka and all these places where you throw flower petals, but we didn't have petals, we had whole big carnations. And the girls were like winding up and throwing them down from the balcony, from the stairway, and Prabhupada, he was like this, getting pummeted with these big carnation heads. But I could see that Prabhupada wasn't disturbed. Just like every morning, I'm getting kind of further and further away from the deities because more and more people are there, and if I get jostled a little bit or someone steps on me, I get more and more agitated. Soon I'm going to be out the door. But Prabhupada wasn't affected, even though he was hit like that with the devotees. He didn't, someone gives you an elbow or something, you immediately glare at them and you're a little upset. But Prabhupada wasn't like that. He was totally transcendental. So that was my first experience with him, going into the temple room. So that was very nice. Another time in Mayapur in 19 1977, it was the year that Prabhupada left, and he was giving some classes in the morning. He was giving, talking about Prahlad Maharaj, and Prabhupada was so current that right then at the time in America there was a lot of deprogramming going on, and many devotees were getting captured by their parents. Their parents would pay thousands of dollars to have a group come, and Ted Patrick was the king, to get their children back. So they would somehow or other, when they were on Sankirtan or somewhere away from the temple, they would, grab the devotees. They would kidnap them, actually, put them in the car and take them away and try to deprogram them. So that was going on in America at the time. So Prabhupada was reading a verse about Prahlad Maharaj, and then speaking about Prahlad Maharaj and how they were trying to deprogram him. The Hiranyakashipu and the teachers were trying to deprogram Prahlad Maharaj, just like in today. So Prabhupada was very current, in bringing the Bhagavatam in. That year, there wasn't any facility for ladies, especially. And the long building was about halfway down in Mayapur, so naturally all the men stayed there. And they gave the ladies the rooftop of what was the kitchen at the time. And rooftop means rooftop. There was no covering, there was no bathrooms, there wasn't anything. It was just an open roof. And of course we were kind of innocent, just happy to be there, and we just threw our luggage down. And so a big storm came, and totally everything got flooded, and everyone got sick. And somehow I found some shelter somewhere. But the devotees, everyone got very, very sick. But Prabhupada was giving class, so I wanted to be able to go and see him. And practically I crawled all the way, to go to the temple to see Prabhupada. So I was sitting there, and if anyone has gotten sick in India, which I'm sure all of you have, the dysentery in the stomach thing, and I'm holding my stomach, and I can hardly keep my head up. But anyway, I sat through class. So afterwards, as was Prabhupada's custom, he would go around and circumambulate the temple. So it was a very ecstatic time, because the Gurukula kids were running and jumping, and all the devotees were there, and Prabhupada was going around. So Prabhupada would stop after he'd circumambulate, he'd ring the bell 3 times, and the devotees would just go wild. And so Prabhupada was going around, so he stopped to ring the bell, and he looked over in my direction. Devotees all have this experience how Prabhupada was looking at you, but he was looking in my direction, but somehow I caught his glaze. Prabhupada was ringing the bell, and with his other hand, he went like this, like rise up. And then just by that, I was like doubled over in pain, but just by that one gesture, Srila Prabhupada, somehow or other, I was able to get up and start dancing. It was just so ecstatic, because his potency, his mercy, I felt was so uplifting that I was able to momentarily transcend my body. And that was very sweet. I was able to cook for Prabhupada. Prabhupada was very sick at the time, and he stopped giving the classes. Tamal Krishna Maharaj came down, and Prabhupada was scheduled to speak, and he said Prabhupada's not feeling well. This was in March of 1977, and Tamal Krishna, I believe, gave the class. And so later on, Gaur Purnima, I was in the little kitchen there. It was very simple and a little austere. I had a couple burners on the floor, and so I was doing some service, peeling some vegetables, helping out. So Madhuri came down, who was Tamal Krishna Maharaj's widow, and she said, Prabhupada wants to eat. He hasn't eaten in days now, and he wants to eat. Please help me. And I thought, wow, being in the right place at the right time, this is great. So then I was able to make a little eggplant sabji, and this was the first time he wanted apple juice, and so I was like, okay, where's the juicer? And of course they didn't have it then, so I grated an apple and I put it in a little sock or something and squeezed it, and out came all the juice. And so it was very nice. So then she took the plate up. It was a marble plate and very beautifully made. And so I thought, well, I'm going to hang around here a little bit longer, because I'm going to get some genuine prasadam. So then I did some dishes and waited. And so when she came down with the plate, I was the only one there, so I thought, I'm going to have this whole thing myself. And so I'm about to tap the plate. She said, actually, Prabhupada said that when he's sick like this, he doesn't want anyone to take any of his remnants. Oh. And so I was like, she saw the look on my face, and she said, but you know what, that juice, actually, he didn't drink any of it, so you can have it. So then she said, put your head back, and then she just took the marble cup and poured it into my mouth. So that was good. That was very sweet. This is time Prabhupada came to San Diego. We were up in San Francisco for the Rath Yatra, and the devotees had driven up in an old, the Americans know what this is, an old bread truck, which means a big square truck with no windows in it. And so they...
No chairs.
Huh?
No chairs.
And no chairs, no cushioning, nothing to sit on. And they stuffed it with the devotees and drove, 10-hour drive. But the nice thing about the bread truck, it was all painted up. It was bright blue with Lord Chaitanya dancing on it. It said World Sankirtan Party, although we never really left San Diego except when we went to San Francisco. But we had that in Balboa Park, and Prabhupada saw it. And he asked about it. He goes, what temple is that from? And then they found out, it's from San Diego. And Prabhupada said, I must go to that temple. So then, as usual, the devotees would rush, to get everything, freshly painted and fixed up. So we thought we'd have a really special surprise for Srila Prabhupada. We had a house. There was a house there, and it was painted very beautifully, bright blue and bright orange in the residential neighborhood. The devotees have joined in India and see these palatial buildings, have no idea about the beginning days, and even the present days in America with some of the temples that are just houses, really glorified houses. So there was a front veranda, and then you walked up the steps. So the devotees decided to paint the Hare Krishna mantra on the sidewalk to really please Prabhupada, because we knew that when he saw the Hare Krishna mantra, that he would know that we were really serious devotees and that we were really relishing the holy name. So as you can imagine, when Prabhupada pulled up and he saw it, he just looked at it and he talked, he wouldn't of course walk on it, he walked around it, and then later of course told the devotees, how can you put the Hare Krishna mantra on the floor when you can walk on it? But we were just blissful, we were just like, not even paying attention to those kind of things. The ladies were up on the front, we were throwing flower petals down, and Prabhupada was so ecstatic that he came. Also, the devotees put a verse on the back of the wall of the fence of the property that said, the 3 gateways are leading to hell, lust, anger, and greed, and every sane man should give these up because they lead to the degradation of the soul. So that he saw and that he liked because it was up on the fence. And about 15 years later, I came back and visiting the temple there. We had sold it and moved away, but that verse was still there. So I thought that was really, somehow or other, they appreciated that. So they had a chain across the front door there, and so we went up there, and I just said, excuse me, I lived here 15 years ago, and I was wondering, and she said, why this fence is here, why this chain is here? She said, because every Sunday, she said, someone comes and walks into our house and asks for that free feast 15 years later. When Prabhupada was there that time, of course, like I said, the third string devotees hardly had any. At that time, the movement was so big, and the newer devotees didn't have a lot of opportunity for association with Prabhupada. So that saying is, by hook or by crook. So I thought, well, I'm going to somehow or other get close to Prabhupada. And so we came up with a scheme. There was one household couple that lived in San Diego. Everyone else just lived like in the temple. So we went over, so Prabhupada was staying there with just one servant. And so we went over there, and there were some bushes right in front of the apartment. It was a duplex, so it was on the ground floor. So we wanted to get the nectar, and so we kind of forced ourselves, and we were hiding in the bushes. It was something like, like I Spy or something. We were like, opening up the bushes and watching Srila Prabhupada. He was in his living room, and he was taking some watermelon, because it was in the summer, it was very hot, and he ate it very interestingly, because he took the watermelon, he just sucked it, he didn't chew it, he just sucked the juice out of it, and then put it back down. And I was thinking, that's what I want. So there's 3 of us, and we're all like bumbling, hiding in the bushes, kind of laughing and giddy and afraid we're going to get caught. But the door was it was like the bush, the sidewalk, and then the door. There was no screen door on there, and the door was open. And so Prabhupada was sitting in the living room, so he had his plate, he was taking prasada, and then it was our chance. He got up with this servant and went into the bathroom. So I'm like nudging the other devotee, go in there and get that, go in there and get that. He goes, no, you go in there and get that. So then, somehow or other, we convinced him to go in there, and he crawled in and he grabbed the watermelon off the plate and made it out behind the bush, right as Srila Prabhupada came out. So we were able to, accept that nice Mahaprasad. So I've been speaking now for a little while, so I can, if there's time left, there's a few more pastimes, but that'll be enough for now. And I'll turn it over. Who would like to go next? Give a little introduction. Okay, this is Mother Mukhya. We're traveling together here in India and having a wonderful time. She's also a senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada and did a lot of service in the Dhatreyi temple. Tier 3. And so she's going to share with us some pastimes. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I met Srila Prabhupada first by reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. I was a student in college in Ann Arbor, Michigan in 1973, and I had taken a course and I had to visit religious places. I visited the temple and bought a Bhagavad Gita and read it, and I felt like actually that I had begun a connection right then after reading the book because it was extremely meaningful for me. I was a student, I was searching. Those were the years where people really were looking for meaning in life, and as soon as I read it, I said, this book has every answer for everything I've ever wanted to know, so I'm going to leave college and follow this. And I was married, and so my husband and I started visiting the temple regularly, and then it was the summertime, 74, and I had something to do up in British Columbia, so we traveled up there and stopped at temples every Sunday. And one of the Sundays was the San Francisco Rath Yatra in 1974. And that was a very transformational experience for me because Prabhupada was there and things were so vibrant then. Like temples were full. There was 150 devotees in every temple in America at that time. And I was 20 years old, so I was full of life and energy, and seeing Prabhupada there, he gave class in the Berkeley Temple in the morning, and I had gone down to the Brahmacharya ashram, probably, I don't know, use the facilities or something, and somebody came in with this huge rose garland, like it must have been from the floor up to here, and they said, Prabhupada's garland, who wants it? Nobody said anything, and I was like, nobody, bhakti, nobody, and I said, I want it! So I got the garland, and I wore that big red rose garland all day. They must have been making them for him because there's a picture of him in that Rath Yatra when he was dancing on the stage and he was in a big red rose garland. I don't think it was the same one, but it was his garland. So when we got back to Detroit after that summer, Krishna arranged, that was 1974, for us to move into the temple. And then Prabhupada was coming to Detroit. So I think I can't really remember that much if I met him at the airport. I didn't see him. I got back to the temple and I was waiting perched on the window ledge of the second-story window to shower flowers on him when he came out. Me and another girl, two other girls I believe were on the same, three of us on the same window ledge. And so then Prabhupada came up and I had this very same experience. I hadn't seen him physically before, and I thought he would be much bigger. He was so small, and then he was surrounded by all these great big young men. And I was like a little disappointed actually, thinking, well, I can't hardly see him, he's so little. But then he came in and we were, showering flowers on him. It was a very transcendental scene, and he walked way up the stairs to see the deities, and it was just a wonderful experience having him there because even though there was a lot of devotees, it was quite intimate. And he would give class in the evenings in someone's apartment, and it was quite a small living room, and we heard, he liked white sheets on the floor. I couldn't even conceive of what in the world would anyone put sheets on the floor, but we got the sheets and stretched them out, and he came in and sat behind a little dais, and my mother-in-law came, and just on her own, she came in with a little basket of fruit, and she stood at the door, a little tentatively, and Prabhupada saw her, and he was like, come in, and he was so personal. It was very touching to me that he even noticed her and cared about her to ask her to come and sit close. And then he spoke. I don't really remember the things he spoke about that day. And at the end of his stay, devotees took him to the airport, and I stayed back to clean the apartment. And
we took all like the orange rinds, and we were like chewing up the rinds, and anything we could find that he touched, we were inhaling or eating or just relishing so much that he, you know, anything he touched. The mood was so surcharged with love for Srila Prabhupada, so that, you know, the persons that you that were working with or working under, or your authorities, you know, you were like absorbing that energy of love, and it was just like Shruti Gurti said, that Prabhupada said, service is love. So that's how you develop your love for Srila Prabhupada, just by serving him. And for devotees like me, I mean, I wasn't just in the background really, but you know, very enthusiastically serving him, especially in those days. We knew that Prabhupada's heart was book distribution, so going out on book distribution was a great way to really connect closely with Srila Prabhupada and be reciprocated with, I think. Then the next time Prabhupada came to Detroit, we were looking at a new temple, and it was called the Fisher Mansion. It was quite a palatial building by any standards, and especially in the United States, but even by any standards, it was an extremely unique property. The interior was very, very artistically decorated, and the doors were hand-carved, and there were hand-tooled columns, and the floors were onyx and marble and different kinds of tiles. The ballroom, this house was built by Lawrence Fisher, who built Cadillac cars. He had a ballroom that was just built to be a temple. There were 3 Vedic arches at the back of the ballroom, and the ceiling must have been 30 feet high at least, and it was painted blue with white clouds, so it was very transcendental. And when Prabhupada went in, they showed it to him. He really liked this building, and he wanted it right away, and he told the devotees to get it, and then he called 2 of his disciples, Ambarish and Lakar Shivanti, and he said, you two share, each of you pay half, and we'll buy this building. So he met with the realtor and the owner, and they took him around and showed him different things. I mean, none of this could be duplicated. We couldn't even get the building insured because they couldn't replicate anything that was in there if it had become damaged. They couldn't replace it. So he said to the realtor, we like this very much. And then he said to the man, you should give it to us. And like the realtor was like, you know, her mouth dropped open. She was thinking, I'm going to lose my commission. And he said, well, I can't do that. But so they negotiated, actually. Prabhupada negotiated a price, and he got it for less than the asking price. And then he, after we were, you know, had a contract on it, and he took the devotees around. I wasn't there, but I think my husband must have been there, different people. And he walked through, and it was like a museum, this place. And there was a fountain in the front entryway with a statue, like a naked, I don't know what, a woman or something, you know, where the water poured down. And Prabhupada said, do you like this? And somebody said, oh, Govardhan thinks this is Maya, Prabhupada. He said, no, this is very beautiful. Leave this here. And so, you know, he kind of taught us to, like, not everything had to be destroyed and painted pink and blue. So they walked up the stairs, and there were frescoes on the walls, you know, like kind of like oil paintings with texture all along the walls of Italy. And he said, leave these here and refurbish them. So we did. And the building is, I don't know what it looks like today, because it's been a while since I've been there, but it was quite a showplace. And in fact, he said to my husband, make this a showplace for Krishna. And we really did that. He bought, in the late 70s or mid-70s, he went to India and bought a lot of museum quality art pieces that actually can't be purchased anymore. He bought from the Maharani of Jaipur and the Maharaja of Jaipur. He bought some very fantastic pieces, and they're there in the temple, and it really did become a showplace. And then we created a wonderful preaching venue there, because and by we I don't mean me, and other devotees had this idea to co-opt with the different homes that were built by auto barons, so-called auto barons, you know, people who were in the car industry. And so we created a tour. They didn't even think of this. We thought of this. And we said, we'll bring in buses. They'll go to your place, and our place, and your place. And that'll be the tour. and we'll feed them when they come to our place. So the lunches include, so we had, you know, hundreds of people come through. We had a museum, we had a guide who, you know, simultaneously told them about Lawrence Fisher and his ballroom, but what we're using it for, and, you know, what this statue is, and what this book is, and what this painting is. And it was a wonderful, wonderful preaching venue. During that time, after we had acquired the property, Prabhupada came back. And that was a really sweet time. By then I was maturing. I was probably like 22. So it's hard to have realizations. I was thinking now about my realizations then. I didn't really get any because, you know, I couldn't hardly, you know, I wasn't very developed up here at 22. But anyway, Prabhupada came and we brought nice people, interesting people to meet with him, which is one of his favorite things. He loved to meet with big people in the city that he was visiting. So this particular one that I remember, he was the head priest of the Roman Catholic Church in Detroit, and there's a lot of Roman Catholics, a huge Polish population there. So this was a very important man in the city of Detroit, so-called. And they began talking, and Prabhupada was very cordial and polite. And then priests started saying how great they were and what they were doing and how they were helping the poor. And Prabhupada started to probe a little more. You know, he was trying to get at what are you really doing for people spiritually. And the priest just kept coming back to how they're helping the handicapped. He just couldn't kind of get off that. And Prabhupada said, finally he just said, handicapped is handicapped. And then he asked him, you know, what are you doing to help people develop their real relationship for God? He said, everyone is crippled because they don't know their real relationship with God. And he was asking him, what are you doing? And I had that moment I had a little realization that I knew more than this priest. And I was like, oh, I started to get a little glimpse of this sort of incredible depth, and I don't know, how very special, you know, what we were given really was, that we had so much more than even the great big priest for this great big city. During that visit too, there's a photo of Prabhupada. You don't know where he's sitting, but I know where he's sitting. He's outside in the back of the Fisher Mansion, and he's on the grass on these cushions, and he's looking out over at the river. And it was the Detroit River. I mean, nobody thinks Detroit is a beautiful place, not even when you're looking out at the river. But it was a sublime, serene evening, and it was just a few devotees sitting around him, and Prabhupada said, this is the most beautiful place in the world. And I was like a little stunned, because I thought, how could this be the most beautiful place in the world? But then I thought, for Prabhupada, where he's sitting, everything, you know, he's sitting with his disciples, and he's sitting at Krishna's temple, and he has Krishna with him all the time, and it was very beautiful for him. Every place can be very beautiful if you're in that consciousness. I think the only other thing I really want to say is that most of my realizations about Srila Prabhupada, like the development of my own personal feelings of gratitude and awe and dedication, really developed after Srila Prabhupada wasn't physically in our midst any longer. And part of the reason that is because I began to hear, you know, from other devotees memories of Prabhupada and how I learned so much more about Srila Prabhupada from hearing from everyone, and that we didn't do that when he was around, but we started to do it after he left. There was one instance back when he had come to Detroit, he left, and we took him to the airport. There was about 150 devotees, and he was sitting waiting for the plane in a private room, and we had a kirtan, and the room was super packed with people, and I was in the seat and opposite where he was sitting, but he was very far away from me. I was by the door, and he was by the far wall. And we're having a kirtan, and I looked up, and Prabhupada was looking at me. And I looked around to see who he was looking at, and I looked back, and he was still looking at me. It was like a couple of minutes. I felt like he was staring right at me, and it was quite, I don't know, it had a lot of effect on me to have him look right at me like that. It was very personal. And later, when I listened to the memories tapes, I heard so many people have that experience that they thought Prabhupada was looking right at them, but he could look at every single person simultaneously somehow. And I thought, you know, during those days in 1974, there was a lot of gurus around, and they were, you know, promising this kind of mystical things. There was that one, he made raisin come out of his hand, and he had a lot of followers because of that. And there was another one who touched you over here, and he made like your phlegm taste like nectar. And there was a lot of weird stuff that was sort of so-called mystical. And I always thought, well, my guru doesn't really do mystical things, but, you know, still, you know, he was obviously, there was so much special, something so special and unique there that he didn't have to do that. But then after I started hearing these tapes, and I heard all these, actually so many special mystical things that Prabhupada did, you know, where he read people's minds, or he said something to a devotee that they had just been thinking about, and I realized that he just held back from doing all of that. He had all those powers, but it wasn't of any interest to him at all. He just always, he kept all of that in and just gave us Krishna consciousness. I mean, everybody in the world knows about Hare Krishna, even if they don't know who is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, because that was his emphasis, really promoting Krishna and not promoting himself. Okay, I think that's my final word. So Samapriya Prabhu will speak.
Hare Krishna. Just in response to what Mukhya was saying about Srila Prabhupada's mysticism, he often commented when people would inquire about his mysticism. And then he would look at his devotees and say, this is my mysticism, that these people, lechas, have become vaisnavas. And that's what he actually gave to the world. So, talking about the different tiers of devotees, I don't know what tier I'm on. I joined in 1971, and that's when I started to emulate or dedicate my life to Prabhupada. And it took some years before I got initiated in Berkeley. It took 4 years. I got initiated in 75, and Prabhupada also waited 4 years before he got initiated from his spiritual master. So that was a confirmation. Before I started with a few little stories, we went down to Radharaman temple today, myself and 2 other devotees, and the simplicity of the worship and the temple reminded me of a time and when I first joined the movement and came to India, and how Srila Prabhupada was so simple and eloquent in his presentation of Krishna consciousness and his own lifestyle. He encouraged us to be renounced and fully taking shelter of Krishna. It wasn't what nice new sari and outfit we were wearing. If you had some desire to dress up, he would recommend that we dress the deities. And people were very enthusiastic. His devotees were enthusiastic to become renounced and simple. And it was a very different kind of mentality. It was, because if we dress simple, then there's no envy and there's no looking at what is this, sorry, that. Prabhupada knew exactly how to handle his disciples, and he wanted to give pure Krishna consciousness and help us to become free from the bodily concept. It was just an observation that I had today. It would be nice if we get back into that, help to encourage each other, to get back into a simple lifestyle so we can become more concentrated on the goal of life. But of course, on the other side, Krishna consciousness is such a vast culture, so there's so much facility for all kinds of people. So, it was the time of my initiation, and Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture. And it was a very wonderful lecture. It was during Rath Yatra, actually. Where? San Francisco. Berkeley. And then one child began to cry. So the temple president, who was very enthusiastic, said, okay, all children out of the temple. So then Srila Prabhupada said, oh, that's okay. And then he started to speak something. He said, children are not responsible. They can do whatever they like. They're not responsible. And he said, also women. Women are not responsible. So everyone was cheering. People were getting more enthusiastic. And then he said, also Brahmins are not responsible. And then he said, and old men are not responsible. So he said, in this assembly, there are children, women, Brahmins, and old men. So here no one is responsible. And then he said, but don't take advantage. So that was very sweet. And for my initiation, when I was called up, I had, first thing I did was pay my dandavats, which usually that wasn't done, but I was very enthusiastic. Flat down in front of Srila Prabhupada, and I had a bouquet that I was going to offer him when I received my beads. So I had my bouquet that I had made, and I was going to give it to Srila Prabhupada with my right hand, and I extended my left hand to receive the beads. So Jayatirtha said, don't get your beads with your left hand. You have to take your beads with your right hand. So I put the bouquet in my left hand, and I stretched out my beads with my right hand to get the beads, and gave Srila Prabhupada with my left hand the flowers. And he said, no, don't do that. You have to give the flowers with the right hand. And Srila Prabhupada's watching this circus. And then he looks at Jayatirtha, and he says, it's okay, it's okay. So that was nice. Srila Prabhupada was very merciful, and he says it's okay to me a few times. Another instance, I was in Los Angeles, and that's where Golden Avatar, which was the original tape ministry of Srila Prabhupada, and that's another thing. We have to encourage each other to hear directly from Srila Prabhupada. There are some devotees who now don't listen to Srila Prabhupada, new devotees, because they don't understand his accent. So we didn't understand anything, but you cultivate it. When you hear from the pure devotee, there is nothing like it. The Srila Prabhupada's words are so potent because they come from Krishna. They come from directly from the spiritual world. So Srila Prabhupada was coming to Golden Avatar Studios to do a recording. And I was living across the street from Golden Avatar in Agni Dham, which was right next to a fire engine station. And there were just some devotees who lived there, so we called it Agni Dham. And so I went across the street to receive Srila Prabhupada with just 4 or 5 devotees. So he pulls up in a car on the street, and we all pay our obeisances. And then Srila Prabhupada, the brahmachari came to the brahmachari. So the brahmachari opens the door, and the curb was high. The curb was about 7, 8 inches high. So when the door was open, whoever was in the car had to pull himself up. So it was difficult to get out of the car. And I'm watching this, and the brahmachari is just spaced out, standing there with the door open, and Prabhupada's trying to get out of the car, and I was thinking, please help Prabhupada get out of the car. I was thinking, I should help Prabhupada get out of the car. So anyway, finally he got out of the car, and he went to Golden Avatar. I felt so guilty. I waited outside the whole time until Srila Prabhupada was finished recording, and finally he came out. I paid my obeisances. And I went up to him, and he was very, he was big, huge, but appeared to be very short, actually. And I went up to him, I said, Srila Prabhupada, please forgive me for not helping you get out of the car. And he looked at the brahmachari. What is she saying? And the brahmachari says, oh, Srila Prabhupada, it's nothing. I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, this is something. Please forgive me that I didn't help you get out of the car when you arrived, and it looked like you needed help, and you were at the stoop, and you needed help, and no one helped you, and I feel like I didn't serve my spiritual master. Please forgive me. And again, he looks at the brahmachari. And he said, Prabhupada, this is nothing. I was suicidal by then. I was like so desperate. I was so desperate because I felt like I made such a great offense. Meanwhile, I was exhibiting the perfect quality of being a fool in front of you, Guru. So that was good. So then I said, Srila Prabhupada, I really made a terrible mistake. I didn't help you get out of the car. And then he looked directly at me again. And he looked at me and he said, no, that's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. Like that. So that was beautiful. And then one more thing I just wanted to, before I tell, I have a few more little ones. But one time my mother and father came to the temple and they saw the devotees. This was in the beginning. And my mother was studying the behavior of the devotees. So then she said to me, you know, everybody looks like Prabhupada. Everybody just seems to, because that's what we did. You spoke of a rock star. We emulated Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada spoke in a certain way, so everybody's speaking in a certain way. Everyone's lifting up, putting a pen. If a pen drops to the floor, you put it on your head because it's Krishna's pen. We imitated Srila Prabhupada. So this is a good thing to do. And this is what we spend our life doing, is that we have to follow the right person. We imitate the pure devotee. Prabhupada said one time that if you don't feel compassion when you go out on book distribution, you act compassionately, and then you'll become compassionate, because that's a compassionate activity. I was also a Sankirtan devotee for many years in Los Angeles. We used to come home from Sankirtan, and Prabhupada would be meeting with some guests in the garden. He loved his garden in Los Angeles. And we'd get out of the car and we'd run to the wall, which was, I don't exactly remember, but there were holes in the bricks or something. And we'd look at Srila Prabhupada, peek in and look at him and how he was behaving. It was so wonderful to come up from Sankirtan and see him like that, preaching. And so that was our relationship with Srila Prabhupada, and it remains our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. We serve. Service is what love is. It starts from duty and then progresses to love. So those of us, and now, Srila Prabhupada was only here for 11 years on the planet doing his, coming to America and giving Krishna consciousness. When you were a devotee for 3 years, you were an old devotee. You know, this is like, anybody who had realizations then, it's nothing compared to what, if you're still following Srila Prabhupada and reading his books and chanting Hare Krishna, what realizations do we have now? We're all children. And if we stay glued to the lotus feet of the pure devotee and try to emulate his behavior, then we make advancement. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita was being printed. And whenever the books came out, and it was a big marathon to print these books. So whenever the books came out, everyone rushed to get them and read them. So I decided to send a present to Srila Prabhupada, and I made a necklace for him, tulsi with some silver wire, and you know, I was making jewelry at that time, and I made this nice necklace for him. Between each group of tulsi, I put some silver and then some wire and beads. It was very sweet, and so I sent it to him. I was so excited about this. And I told some of the devotees that I sent this, and they said, oh, that's really something, because Srila Prabhupada does not like us to wear anything between the tulsi beads. Kuntimala is just kuntimala, no any stones or jewels, just straight kuntimala. That's what Prabhupada liked. So I was thinking, oh, my spiritual life is over. I sent, but actually it was a necklace. It was a necklace. It wasn't like kuntimala. But I was concerned that I sent Srila Prabhupada something that he disapproved of. So then the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think it was the Mukhya came out. And in the beginning of each book, there was a picture of Srila Prabhupada. And in this book, there was a picture of Prabhupada on the Vyasasan in Dallas. And I had sent this necklace to Dallas. And what do you think? He was wearing the necklace. So wonderful. It was very sweet to do that. Let's see what else. know there was a couple more, but I didn't write anything down. But anyway, if we really want to serve Srila Prabhupada, then we have to follow his instructions. That's the real essence, and whoever thinks they can't associate directly with Srila Prabhupada by reading his books and hearing his lectures, then they don't understand what spiritual life is. Spiritual life means you have an eternal relationship. It's based on eternity. It's based on the soul. So every person who takes shelter of Srila Prabhupada, becoming attached to his words, to his body, that's real personal. That's Prabhupada's ecstasies, the purports of his books. He has kindly been empowered. He used to say he didn't write this. He used to say Krishna wrote this. So he gave us all of this knowledge, and we can spend our life doing that. That makes our preaching even more potent. When we chant, when we get absorbed in the holy name and reading Srila Prabhupada's, the pure devotees' words, then we don't have to waste a lot of time with frills. We can become very brave and say, "Excuse me, sir. Please chant Hare Krishna." No, wait. Because what we have to say is so important. And the people know that we're not coming from a platform of envy. We're coming from a platform of love. So I used to distribute books and many big volumes, Bhagavad Gita, self-realization, carrying many books with me all the time, days and days and days, and gradually less and less and less until finally now, I finally printed cards a few years ago, so that I could at least, because I can't carry anything. Now I can still carry the Hare Krishna mantra on a card, and I say, "Please, sir, take this and chant Hare Krishna." So that's what we have to do, and that makes us feel wonderful, because that's the constitutional position of the soul, and that's what Srila Prabhupada taught us, how to become awakened to our eternal nature as servants of Krishna. So please chant Hare Krishna, read Srila Prabhupada's books, and then you have the capacity to be happy. Thank you.
I have a few more pastimes, but just in the vein that these we're speaking of, that association with Srila Prabhupada, because many of you, except for a handful, are not Srila Prabhupada's direct disciples, second generation devotees. But as Mukhya mentioned, when Prabhupada was with us, of course we joined toward the end, so it was only a few years anyway that Prabhupada was on the planet, but there was no internet. There was to call India, it was called a trunk call, and you had to book it like an hour ahead of time, and it was extremely expensive. And so we actually didn't hear that much about Prabhupada when he was with us on the planet. And generally when Prabhupada, he came to San Diego twice, and then he came to Detroit twice, he spent a little more time in LA. But none of us got so much direct association with Prabhupada. Of course, Prabhupada gives that example of the fly on the king. He's very close to the king, but what's his business? Nothing. Just bothering the king. So similarly, just being close to Prabhupada without doing service was pretty useless. So all of us felt close to Srila Prabhupada by doing service. And later, after Prabhupada left, and all these amazing books came out, the Leelamritas and all devotees' personal realizations that are writing. Shruti here is an author, writer of a book. You read some yet?
No, this is Shruti. Shruti, not Shruta.
Well, he was also in South Africa, and he has so many pastimes there.
There's a book about South Africa.
Yeah, so speaking about his pastimes in South Africa. And the memory tapes, and this is how I really learned a lot about Srila Prabhupada. So everyone has a total equal opportunity to really, relish and understand Prabhupada, because really when he was on the planet, although that enthusiasm and that surcharge of spiritual energy that was buzzing everywhere may not be so strong now as it was before, but the access to Srila Prabhupada through, of course, through his books and through all these memories is just incredible. And everyone has a totally equal opportunity to, feel close to Srila Prabhupada and relish those pastimes, even more than when he was, with us. Because as we know, service and separation is the higher bhav. So just wanted to mention that. When Prabhupada was in San Diego, The Brahmatrini ashram was one room about half the size of this room, and at the time we had maybe 10 full-time Brahmatrinis, book distributors, and then everyone came from Laguna Beach, from LA to see Srila Prabhupada. So we probably had 30 ladies in a room about this size sleeping there, and there was one bathroom. So you can imagine the state of what the room looked like and what the bathroom looked like. So Srila Prabhupada came to give the morning class, and the temple room was about that size too, very small. Everyone was like, all packed in. And I was by the door because I had come in a little late. And so Prabhupada picked up his picked up the kartals and started to chant Jai Radha Madhava. So he clanged the kartals a few times, and then he set them down, and then he went like this and called Tamal Krishna over. And everyone was like, whoa, what's going on? And Prabhupada said something. There's a little exchange. And then Prabhupada started to get up off of the asasana. So you can imagine the devotees, and I was thinking, what's happening? We've offended him. He's not going to speak. He doesn't like it here. So many things. So Prabhupada gets up, and like in 2 steps he was at the door. And then another 2 steps he was practically in the Brahmatrini ashram. He had to use the bathroom. And that was the only in the temple, because it was just a regular house. And in those days, you only had one bathroom practically in the house. So it was the only place for Prabhupada to go. So then, somehow or other, I ascertained what was going on in a few seconds, and then ran into the room and just, threw the saris and the towels and, got everything and, wiped up the floor in about 10 seconds. And then Prabhupada came in. Brahmatrini ashram, you can imagine. And then, I was like this up against the wall, and Prabhupada came in and he gave his beads to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and went in and came back out and walked in and sat back on the vyasasana, picked up his kartals and started playing. So I got to go on a walk with him also at Balboa Park. The temple was about 3 blocks from Balboa Park, which is a beautiful, amazing park. And I believe that it was also built, had a World's Fair there at the turn of the century, so it was very opulent. So we were walking, like Mukhya was saying also, we were young devotees. We were just like amazed to be with Srila Prabhupada. We weren't that philosophical, and a lot of times we were cooking or doing some cleaning, and so I was kind of trailing behind. And Prabhupada chanted a lot, but one thing that he said on the morning walk, one devotee said, Prabhupada, how do you like this park? Does it remind you of Vrindavan? Because it was very green also, and Prabhupada looked around. He said, Vrindavan? No, Dwarka. Because it was very opulent, had these very big museums and things like that. In San Francisco, I guess it was 76, I got to go up a little early because I could sew. I could sew a little bit, so they needed to make new carts, new flags for the carts, and new new canopies. So I went up there about a week early, and Srila Prabhupada came. It was a new, maybe it was 75, because it was a new building. We weren't there that long in the Berkeley Temple. So Prabhupada was staying there. So, he came while I was there. So when he first arrived at the temple, he did a press conference, which was kind of common. The devotees would call the reporters and have them be there, and Prabhupada would come and meet them and answer questions. So the devotees have heard this story a lot, but this was like the origin of the story. So the devotees were sitting around and reporters, and Prabhupada was very casual, and he was very warm to the reporters. Prabhupada wasn't, it's not like Prabhupada was like a village boy, and he was like in awe of these reporters. He was like very, of course, confident with them, and very cordial, and very sharp with them, and very sweet with them. So Prabhupada sat, and he was very relaxed, and he was, reporters asked a few questions, and then Prabhupada said, talking about his plane ride, and he said that the pilot came and talked to Srila Prabhupada and sat down with him, and the pilot said to him, Swamiji, can I ask you a question? And Prabhupada said, sure. I guess this was the co-pilot, because someone was flying the plane. And he said, God is all good. How come God created evil? Many of you have heard this. And then Prabhupada said, just like the sun is there, we turn our back on the sun and we create the shadow. The shadow is created because we turn our back on the sun. So evil's created. God didn't create evil, but we create it by turning our back on God. Prabhupada kind of sat back and laughed. He goes, "Is that okay? Did I explain things okay to him?" And then all the devotees laughed and they said, "Jai, Jai, Srila Prabhupada." When we were in the sewing room, and it was another devotee, Kanka, and myself, and we were starting to sew the cards. And so one of the servants came in and gave us a hand drawing that Srila Prabhupada did of what he wanted the rough card cloth to look like. And it was very simple and it was very cute. And Kanka said, "That's mine." I said, No, that's definitely mine." And she said, No, that's mine. She ended up getting it, but it was, Prabhupada was very personal. He was very much involved in everything. Even though by that time, in '76, there was almost 100 temples and so many devotees, and but he was still very much concerned how the devotees were eating, how the deities were being taken care of, how the cards were being done. So Prabhupada was, very much into all these details.
Prabhupada wrote me a letter, and he gave me 4 instructions. First, he told me, I sent him some Lakshmi, $5, which was at that time a lot of money somehow. It was a check. So he said, "Thank you very much for the check of $5 and $50. And then he said, I will continue to pray to Krishna for your spiritual advancement. And he said, you just have to do these things. Worship Lord Chaitanya in your home, read my books daily, chant 16 rounds, and always stay in the fire of Krishna consciousness." So these things are universal instructions. And over the years, trying to perform these things, it doesn't mean you just stop at 16 rounds or just, offering some incense to a picture of Lord Chaitanya. We have to learn to go deep into the instructions of the spiritual master, whatever they are. Because Prabhupada is deep, and whatever he says is very deep. So that was my fortune to get those instructions from Srila Prabhupada.
I'm really highly unqualified to talk about the spiritual master. I joined him from Buddha Beach in '73. Said Dhatreyi, dasi. And the first time I was able to see Srila Prabhupada, I was young and I had to kind of connive my way to get to the temple. And I was so amazed to see him because, as someone said here, his stature was short, but his energy was large and all-encompassing, and it was like, once you see Prabhupada, that's it, finished, gone. So I joined as soon as I possibly could. It was pretty wild in those days in Laguna Beach. Our Brahmachari room was like an eighth of a size. Huh?
And when did you stop being wild? When did you stop being wild?
What to do? We were able to go up to San Francisco to go see Srila Prabhupada at Dhatreyi. That was a really wonderful experience. And I remember I was told that, oh, gulab jamans are very healthy for you. And I was sitting in the back of the car, 2 big buckets, and I thought, well, if they're healthy, I should just. Needless to say, I've never had one since. We also, because we were in Laguna Beach, got to see Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles a lot and gave lectures there, and that was really a blessing. And my little daughter, Udilo Arna, was able to get a cookie, and we have a picture of that. So that was very sweet. Prabhupada came to Laguna Beach and I was this pregnant. And we were running around getting so many different things for him to make his stay comfortable and sweet. And I remember I was just praying that I wouldn't burst with my child before he left. In Krishna's mercy, he left Sunday morning, and my daughter was born barely Monday morning, right after he left. Jai. I'm very blessed to be a disciple of Srila.
Hello, my name is Devadahiti, and I also met Prabhupada in San Francisco at the San Francisco Rock Altar. And living in LA, we were bused to San Francisco because LA at that time didn't have rock altar. But when I met Prabhupada, I knew he was my spiritual master, but I knew before that, when I saw a picture of him on the back of the Happening album that I had gotten in the city. From there, I actually joined in Boston under Satrupa Maharaj. I think that was 1971. And then we went with the press to New York, Henry Street, and I spent most of the time in Henry Street. And those are really great days of Krishna conscious training, because it was quite austere, and it probably prepared me for all these years that I am now in India. Like, you know, really cold weather with no running hot water, and then in the summer it was very hot. So it kind of prepared me for this India lifestyle. I'm very grateful, because in Los Angeles is more or less, you know, very heavenly compared to New York. So, and we had a pretty staunch group at that time. So, you know, we were all like, get up before Mangalarti, all our rounds done, out on book distribution. Didn't matter how many kids you had, everybody had to go out. So that was the routine. And I'm very grateful that I have those years. And I'm very grateful to be in Vrindavan. Unfortunately, I was never here when Prabhupada was here. That was the only thing that I missed out on. But at least I'm here now and Prabhupada's here. And I'm grateful for his association right now. Vrindavan. So thank you very much.
I was in Nepal looking for spiritual life. According to a friend of mine, my search makes Radhanath Swami's book look like Dr. Seuss. So I won't go into any details of how I got here, because I have to keep these things a little calm. So I was more attracted to the picture of Srila Prabhupada on the back, that not champa flower, than I was to the picture of Radha Krishna on the front. So I kept that book on my shelf, and I always meditated on this picture. I tried reading some of Prabhupada's books, which their two ex-holinesses who were in the process of grouping in Nepal gave me, but these things just kind of went over my head. I just didn't really comprehend anything I read until after eventually I very soon, you know, came and started doing some devotional service to Srila Prabhupada. I think that doing the service actually connects you more than anything else. So I ended up arriving during a festival. I never stayed in the temple. I arrived in the 1974 Mayapur Festival, which I think was the second Mayapur Festival, and Gaur Purnima Festival. And
as I say, I was never part of the temple, and I saw Srila Prabhupada. That first night, I came in with some other devotees who were no longer here also, and they, all the devotees were staying in the long building, and the only unfinished room was what they gave to the women, so it was like rubble on the floor. And everyone had mosquito nets, so I was fair game. So I went outside, and I slept out. The displays were just open tables, so I slept under Russia with one photograph of a Nanda Shanti, I think his name is, and woke up at 2:30 in the morning with somebody chanting Shnik Shnik Brahma. I saw Srila Prabhupada. They took Prabhupada around. I'd actually seen Prabhupada the week before in Vrindavan, and very, very quickly, he didn't come out much. But then in Mayapur, I saw him walking around. The devotees took him around to show him the different temple displays. And I became completely compelled that this man was going to be the most important man in my life. So this other devotee helped me formulate my letter of application for initiation, which was accepted and signed sight unseen by Shyama Prabhu. And I never met him until 20 years later. And I got initiated within several days of arriving at the festival from nowhere. And I'm sorry to tell the story. So the importance of the devotional service cannot be emphasized. My connection to Srila Prabhupada is probably not any different than anybody else's. We didn't have so much association with Srila Prabhupada. Those older devotees, especially the ones with the sticks, used to protect Prabhupada from the rest of us. So we didn't really get so much context. But that association was very important. I had a few letters from Prabhupada. When I was in England, I was able to send Maha Prasad Mangal Arati sweets because I was in charge of making the Mangal Arati sweets. I was still just first initiated, but he encouraged me. He sent me a letter telling me how thankful he was that he received the sweets. Usually some devotees who would bring them would eat them before they got there, but this time he got them. And he gave me one important instruction, which was perfect the making of milk sweets and offer them to Radha and Krishna. That will be the perfection of your life. And that instruction you can apply to virtually everything you do. Perfect whatever you're doing. Offer it to Radha and Krishna. That's the perfection of your life. This is the essence of devotional service. To connect somehow with your spiritual master, through your spiritual master, with Radha and Krishna. So I had other little experiences at I guess it was another the first Mayapur festival when I got initiated. We were told to pay our full-out dandavats, but Prajna told us to pay our obeisances in the wrong direction. So Prabhupada got each and every one of us up. We had no clue what was going on. We just saw that all these devotees were getting up and turning around and paying their obeisances the other way. There was no question about, there was no conflict about the women paying their full-out dandavats. It's just that we were in the wrong direction. We were supposed to have the spiritual master on our right side and the deities on our left side. So I also did it the wrong way and got up and did it the right way. And then I remember going out on Parvati. Prabhupada wasn't on Pishima was out on park. And Pishima looked exactly like Srila Prabhupada. And her voice was exactly like Srila Prabhupada. And I remember her sitting in the temple room after this one lecture. Prabhupada would get up and then go through this, the one gate upstairs to his room. So he passed by Pishima, and Pishima waited till Prabhupada passed her and then picked up a rose that Prabhupada had stepped on and put it into her mouth. So I was just a brand new devotee, literally days in the temple. I could understand how special Srila Prabhupada was, but I could really understand how special Pishima must be and how realized she was about who is Srila Prabhupada. So that was pretty sweet. One time on Parker, I was sitting next to her. I can't remember exactly which holy place we were in, but there was a well, a pump, and I helped her to get a load full of water. And she offered me water to drink, and I've been in third world countries for years and in India for a couple of years in Nepal. So I drank up from her loda, and devotees were aghast. But she gave me the loda, offered me the water, so I drank. But she was really sweet. And Prabhupada was so personal with us. And when I got up there to take my name and take my beads and to say my four regular principles, and in those days, the eyes are the window to the soul. That was the custom. So you would look deep into somebody's eyes. So I looked deep into Srila Prabhupada's eyes. And Prabhupada's eyes kind of went down all the way out. It's like I felt like some insignificant bug, and I realized I shouldn't have done that. So, but still, then I got my name, which that year they forgot to bring the Vishnu Sahasranam. They brought the Shiva Sahasranam, which is why I got my name like that. In addition to the fact I was coming straight from Shiva Loka there from Nepal. Somehow, Prabhupada was very merciful to give us classes, and I remember one time there was this very boisterous kirtan at Mangal Arati. I was very busy copying all, the samsara prayers and whatever other prayers on some notebook. I don't even know where I got the notebook from, because there was nothing out there to get. So maybe somebody gave me something. So Prabhupada sent a message down because the men were having this boisterous kirtan, and they were like running the whole length of the temple and then running back. So everybody else, which is most of the women, had to flee to the side wings. And Prabhupada actually sent word down that this is not a football game. I think Guru Kripa was leading the kirtan. I don't remember exactly. But they were all there, Vishnudan, Swami, Guru Kripa, all those big devotees were all there. I remember that. This is the first time I remember that. All the times I told this 5 minutes worth. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions you want to give to these esteemed ladies who have stuck it out through thick and thin?
It's a very great fortune, everybody's well supporting Prabhupada. Now I have a question. How do we understand the mode of Srila Prabhupada? That time, it's like you just went and helped Prabhupada, a lot of energy, but now, how do we get the same tempo like how you were just you saw Prabhupada just following the beat, and now we have so many things dwelling on the mind. How do we get that kind of mood?
Well, I think we discussed that pretty much. You said mind, so we need something to fill the mind. Prabhupada's books will fill your mind. You dedicate your life to hearing from the pure devotee, and that will, and believe it. Actually, Prabhupada's words are to be believed. That's a whole other reality. We're hearing, but we're not believing. We're hearing and then we think it's mundane stuff. This is real. Prabhupada's giving the truth. That means you hear the truth and you follow it. You take that leap of faith. We have the faith that Prabhupada is speaking Krishna's words. That's what we should do. And actually, what it does, it unravels our material life. And that's what our fear is. We don't want, because we're identifying with these bodies, so we don't want to unravel. But now we're here, we have some sincerity, right? There must be, everyone is interested to hear about Krishna, to chant his holy name. So keep doing that. You chant and you hear. That's the two foundations, Shravanam Kirtanam, the foundation of spiritual life. That is how you get close to the Guru, by hearing his instructions. Hearing is the first. And then after you hear, you speak.
Actually, Prabhupada loves me more than I love him. And if I give him just a little inch, he gives me more than I can handle. Almost like a tsunami. But Prabhupada's always with me. And Prabhupada's with everyone. He's running the temple. He's doing everything. So it's his temple, and we should have that consciousness that Prabhupada, this is Prabhupada's temple. This is his blood, sweat, and tears. All these ISKCON temples, everywhere. He put all his love and time for us, especially so we have somewhere to go. So just being here in Vrindavan is, you can't help but having a relationship with Prabhupada.
So, but you have the whole temple, all the temples are ready, everything is ready-made. So we had a different experience. We had to go out and do it. And but you can still do it. All you have to do is go out and preach. Prabhupada's doing everything. You just have to take the ball and run with it. You still have to go out and preach. If you stay here, there are thousands of people coming in the door. People, there are not enough devotees to come to, who aren't even inclined to greet them as they come in the door. You could take groups around. Just explain very briefly what Prabhupada's mission is. Give them something. Bring them here. Usually there's a lady to give them some Mahaprasad or something. And then take them around. Show them Prabhupada. Give them Krishna. It's a real simple process. You hear, you preach.
So many disciples of Prabhupada have left over the years. Why do you still stay?
Joy and love that Prabhupada's given us. Yeah, nowhere else compares.
Yes, she said. That's it. We love Prabhupada's love.
Prabhupada gave us the truth. And I feel that people who have gone were impatient. Of course, everyone has a different path in life. But Prabhupada is giving us the highest knowledge, really. I mean, in fact, there was one man who was speaking, commenting on Prabhupada. It's on the Acharya series, and he was in Bombay. And he said he looked to see, every time he spoke to Prabhupada, he looked to see if there was something he could criticize. And he never could find anything. Prabhupada gave us something so inspiring. You have to be patient. You have to be patient. This is not the kind of thing that you digest everything in one day. This spiritual, look what we're looking for, the highest platform of divine love for Krishna. And so this takes a little bit of patience and endeavor. And people who left because they think this, I only know the ABCs. You know the ABCs. It's just like you study music. If you study the scales, you know, in music, then you can play anything. It is all based, you can come up with the most complicated ragas if you study the basic foundation of the scales. Prabhupada has given us everything. So those who have left, they were impatient. And
let's see if I can add anything to that. You know, the mind is very fickle and material energy is very strong. So sometimes it isn't surprising that people will be confused and maybe either enter back into more, you know, endeavor into material life or even go for a different spiritual path. But that doesn't speak anything towards the process or to Prabhupada. It's the individual, actually. I don't know. I never get too concerned about what someone else is doing because I have so much to, you know, deal with to keep my own self fixed in Prabhupada, so to speak. But I think that anyone who's come in contact with Prabhupada is never actually the same again, and they may go back out into the material world, but oftentimes, eventually, they'll come back by Krishna's grace, or maybe in the next lifetime they'll catch it again, but they'll never actually be the same as they were before they came in contact with Prabhupada or this process. The other thing I would add is that sometimes I hear these days people say that Prabhupada didn't give us everything, and I would just say that that's a lie. That's not the truth. Prabhupada did give us everything. I mean, 75 books or more, maybe there are. That's enough for more than one lifetime to study. And if you don't actually sincerely study them, then you have no basis to say anything about what Prabhupada gave. So you have to practice. I mean, that's why it's, I think you said that in class the other day. It's a practice, a spiritual practice. And if you stop practicing, it's not going to work. It's going to stop working. So
where do you stay?
I practice. You know, I want to stay. I want to be here. I mean, this is, you know, I have a determination, just like everyone has some determination who's here every morning getting up. It's not that it's, I mean, it's simultaneously easy and challenging. And that's good. You know, it's good for the soul. It's good for human nature to be challenged, to have some austerity. These things are actually very healthy, and I think one responds positively to them if they engage in them. If you stop engaging, it's going to stop working. And so for me personally, I do it because I want to do it. I want to get to the goal. I've got the carrot in front of me. I keep moving towards it.
I stay because the food's good. Maybe that has something to do with it. Well, for myself and for all the devotees that are still here, I feel that if we can become absorbed in our service, Prabhupada said we should become expert at least one thing and very good at everything else. So there's so many things that Prabhupada gave us to absorb ourselves in. So for myself, I just found something that I liked, something that was needed, and just stuck with that. That's very, very good.
I like the association. Prabhupada gave us temples just so that we would have association. Because if we don't have association, then we don't have spiritual life. One time, when I was first in England, I'm thinking maybe I was a devotee for a couple of months after that, I realized that I was living in an ashram with people I would never in my entire life ever spend any time with, ever. And maybe I should go out and live somewhere else so I wouldn't create offenses. So I wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada answered me by saying, please stay in the temple so it will be easier to, otherwise you will not be able to follow the regulative principles. So by regulative principles, I understood that he didn't just mean the four regulative principles, but also the regulative programs and everything, which means classes a day, the rounds, you know, the service and the prasadam and whatever. So I've always kept, whenever Krishna throws a wrench in things, I always remember this instruction. And it keeps me a little solid, and I know I can't go anywhere because Prabhupada told me. So I can't go anywhere. That's why I don't go anywhere.
Also, Prabhupada said we should not be surprised at who leaves. We should be surprised at who stays, because this Krishna consciousness in the material world is abnormal, actually. This material energy, the purpose of the material energy is not to create devotees. Ultimately, yes, but there's always obstacles there. So there are obstacles in spiritual life. But it does say in the Bhagavatam that one will come to Krishna when he's materially exhausted. Right? So Prabhupada gave us the Hare Krishna mantra, and it does work. The process works. It must work, or else why are we still here?
You experience that anyway, don't you? Know, it's, I mean, getting older is very nice actually in Krishna consciousness, because with each new sort of decade, more stuff falls away, more material desires fall away, life can become simpler. I mean, there's a natural progression to your personal growth that happens, and if it's happening within the process of Krishna consciousness, it's very palpable. Things that, you know, at one time bothered you don't bother you anymore, and life does become simpler. And in some ways, you know, Krishna consciousness becomes more and more real. You know, real.
Actually, you actually start to become detached to the material energy and really develop a taste for chanting Hare Krishna. Attachment to chanting Hare Krishna, attachment to Krishna, and detachment from the material energy if we continue hearing and chanting. That's it. We just have to continue hearing and chanting. Once we stop hearing from Srila Prabhupada, then we're on our own, and that's not safe.
Actually, truthfully, I'm afraid of Maya. And she's like lurching 24 hours. So I made it my life to just be attached to chanting, and I carry this like a security blanket. And it's true. I hold it dear to me, and that's probably why I haven't left. Because I've been chanting.
Prabhupada said that about his disciples, that we're not afraid of Maya enough. That's what he said. He said, we're not afraid of Maya enough. So that's strong words, and now my dear God sister, she's terrified of Maya. So now that if we're terrified of Maya, that means we can't just walk around being terrified. We have to take shelter of the safest position. And the safest position is if we're chanting Hare Krishna and remembering Krishna.